Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly discussion series that's hosted by the Chaldean Cultural Center in collaboration with U of M Detroit Center, Unique Voices in Films, and CMN TV. I'm your host, Wiam Nemu. And by the way, everybody, happy New Year for 2023. We have been gone for a little while. It's been very refreshing, and we're very happy to come back in the month of January celebrating leadership, activism, especially since it's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday happens to be this month. And our first guest is Bilal Hammoud. Hello, Bilal.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here with you all. I'm very excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. And so Bilal, he's the first Arab American appointed to Michigan's Department of State Executive Office. He centers his service around public education and statewide resource creation for ID and election accessibility. He serves on several nonprofit boards, including Reaching Our Children, United Humanitarian Foundation, Don't Be Shai, or Chai, as the Iraqis would say.
I like what they say,
And Eternal Light. Hammoud recently ran for state representative in the Dearborn area and has since then started a consulting firm which supports local governments and nonprofits in the Midwest, specializing in data, community outreach, and multicultural media and public education. Do quite a bit, Bilal. Very impressive.
Thank you.
So let's dig into your childhood and tell us about how you got involved in all of this. So were you born here in Michigan?
Yeah, so my parents came from Lebanon a year before I was born, and they brought me here to this country, born in Michigan, born and raised in the Detroit area, with me and my three younger sisters. So we've lived here our whole lives, and I'm thankful for it. It's where our community is here. And here in Dearborn, we have so many Arab Americans, so much good food, so much good culture. It's nice to be surrounded by the people that you're familiar with and also have this very diverse community that is Detroit and Michigan to share it all with. It's what inspired me to want to be more of a bridge, because I saw that I could be that bridge between my community and others. And why not do that amongst other communities and resources and the things that they're entitled to. So it's it's been an exciting life, I'll tell you. And I'm very thankful for my parents and my family. They gave me all the opportunities I could ask for.
So tell us some of the experience that led you, to want to serve the public. Was there any particular experiences, or was this just part of your family's upbringing or your parents, something that they did? What was it that drew you into the work that you do?
Definitely inspired a lot by my parents. My mom and my dad, they raised me and my sisters to be very selfless, very giving, to be not ones that look to improve oneself, but improve those lives around them. And I think that's a trait that they got from back home. And I got to say that the one experience I have that I always look to is with me and my dad. My dad came to this country to start a family, and he used to be a math professor back in Lebanon. He comes to this country and he starts working on cars because it's what you can do. It's Michigan. It's the Motor City. So he starts working on cars, works up to build his own dealership, and sacrifices everything just to provide for our family and to give us that space to feel comfortable. And even though we struggled through points in our lives, I remember this point where literally the home we started in Detroit, over in the Warrendale area, our roof collapsed in on us and we had to leave. It was this giant storm that hit. And even through the difficulties that we went through, they never made us feel like we didn't have enough. That kind of self-sacrifice to give to your children, to give to others, to make sure that they feel that comfort, feel that inclusion, it's inspirational. I mean, look at the way that people feel so excluded now, especially that isolation that folks feel, that communities feel. That changes the way that you interact with the people around you, with the government around you, and with yourself. And that relationship between you and whether it's God, whether it's your community, whether it's your family, that is how you live your life. And so if you're not feeling comfort in that, because of the way you're being treated, the way you're being isolated, you don't have that bridge to connect you between the resources that you need, that you're entitled to. I mean, that's why I do what I do, because my family didn't have those resources. We didn't know they existed. The first time that I fell in love with the public libraries was when I went to the Caroline Kennedy Library here in Dearborn Heights, and they had this program, really cool, where they'd give you free museum passes to any museum in the area. And so me and my three younger sisters, that was the reason why we got to go to museums. $20 entrance fee to a museum is expensive, but when the library is this fundamental resource in a community, it changed my life. It's why I love libraries. It's why I love different cultures and experiences, because I got to witness them through these institutions. And so it's things like that.
It's
those types of
interesting,
resources.
Bilal, that you were born here and you didn't take some of these things for granted, because I know mostly immigrants, when they come and they see this difference, then they really have a different type of appreciation for it. But sometimes the people born here are kind of like, it's a given, and it seems just, that's why they are called privileged oftentimes, is because there isn't that sense of what's missing versus what we have. So that you just from a young age understood the importance of what you were being offered, and you used it.
I think most first generation people can relate. You are that connection for your parents, right? So you're the one calling Comcast when something's wrong with your internet. Even if you're 6 years old, you're the one who's making those relationships happen. And you discover alongside your parents, and you try to be that bridge that connects them. It's that theme that kind of I've lived my life by.
That part I can relate to. Yeah,
I
know.
Right?
You just took me back to, the time where I had to fill out all the applications, make all the phone calls, like all that dependence that happened from my parents. And you're right, that does create a different understanding and appreciation. So I kind of now see more like, okay, why did you grow up? Because you saw the role that you were playing from a very young age was of service. That's what it was. So, you're the first Arab American appointed to Michigan State Department. What is that like, and how do you think you got there?
So it was definitely a growing experience. I started my career and my education in academia. I had done research in Parkinson's for 2 years. I was studying neuroscience, and that was my goal. I wanted to cure Parkinson's. That was the ultimate dream I had in my work. But I quickly realized in research, especially in neuroscience research, to go from lab rat trials in which you're suppressing a gene to try and prevent Parkinson's from developing, to a human trial, to something practical and applicable, it was going to take 15, 20, 30 years. And I knew that the results I wanted to see and my impact on this world needed to be more direct. And so I shifted into a new major being offered at Wayne State at the time, which was public health. And with that comes policy, it comes advocacy, it comes a whole nother realm of engaging in society. And I fell in love with it. I started working for the city of Sheboygan. I had the opportunity to go up there by chance and ended up interviewing for their project manager position a week later, and did that for about a year. And that's where I really got into advocacy following that. I started working with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, which centered their work around environmental advocacy. So we were trying to fight PFAS, which I ended up writing my thesis on, which is this chemical that exists. I'm sure you've heard of it, this microplastic that exists in a lot of the products that exist out there. And it's harmful. It's harmful to your heart, to your kidneys, to your liver. And yet it's in almost every water source at this point. And it's as a result of, irresponsibility in corporate and government pollutions. And so that really drove me to get into that environmental justice aspect of advocacy, fighting to make sure our teachers were getting equally paid. Because, at the fundamental part of everything, if you're not getting a good education, and you're not, giving your teachers the respect and the pay that they need, how are the kids going to grow up? How are the students going to understand the knowledge that they need to truly invest back into that society? It's very simple on paper. Sorry, it's very simple to us, but it seems like on paper something changes with others. But trying to invest more in education, trying to get more equity just across the board. There was so much that I saw as gaps. And doing that work for a number of years, I ended up falling into the right spaces where I got the call to join the Jocelyn Benson's new administration. She had formed this new department. So the idea behind the public engagement team is, let's take the most active agency that interacts with the most people publicly and actually give them some outreach, right? And it was a genius idea. I think for a long time, we treat government as this, this entity up here, and we have to interact with it when we have to, and otherwise we don't want to see it. But it should be so much more. You should build a relationship, that trust, that level of resource that exists isn't just when you need it. It should always be there. You should know in the back of your mind, get comfort from it being there at all times. And so I joined that team. It was an amazing opportunity. I'm incredibly thankful to this day because it was the space where I think I got to really grow in my public service. Government work, people often say isn't rewarding financially, but it very much is in every other aspect. I had the opportunity quickly to develop a team that focused on getting outreach to our elections. So making sure those who didn't engage in the election process, those lowest 100 performing precincts in the entire state of Michigan, were getting the attention and getting the town halls, getting the resources they need to engage in that process, to feel like they were included. And we saw those direct results in the election following. I think my biggest passion project, or one of them, when I worked with the Department of State, was the Language Access Task Force, which took off. It was this just initiative to help get some of our documents translated into multiple languages for the election. And then we realized it could be so much more. It turned into this 50 partner organization that focused on translating every document in the Secretary of State into 9 languages spoken across the state. So the top 9 languages: Arabic, Spanish, Bengali, Burmese, Tagalog, Mandarin, and more. And made sure that we were focusing on actually serving those communities. Because at the end of the day, if you're not communicating in the language that people are comfortable with, how are they going to feel comfortable with the things you're offering them? And so we created voter materials, sample ballots, voter guides, registration forms, absentee applications, excuse me. And then later went on to translate all of our documents as well. And that was just an incredible experience to work with so many communities and organizations. We hosted these town halls that were completely in language, right? So it was how to vote and how to get engaged in that process, but in Mandarin, in Arabic, in the Yemeni dialect of Arabic. And we had these presenters that were actually engaged with their community because they knew it. It was their cousins on the line. It was their friends, their neighbors. It was the people that were trusted messengers. And really connecting with those communities, even if I didn't understand the language, being on those calls and just kind of nodding, being like, yeah, this is really cool. This is really cool. It was a cool experience. And there's so much more that I got to gain from that. But yeah, I'm very thankful.
Well, I just had a question. It's funny because this was going to be my next question. And somebody's asking here, nothing in the Chaldean, Assyrian, Syriac language. Well, that's a very special language, and I've tried to study it. It's not that easy, but it I don't even know if people really read it, but I don't think that anything probably was created in the Chaldean language. But my question to you is going to be this: the Chaldeans and the Arabic community, they both come from the Middle East. There are some differences. There's a lot of similarities, but their issues tend to be sometimes different, or so we think, right? Is there really, what are the difference and the similarities that the Arab and the Chaldean communities face that you have you've shared some of these stories actually with me, and I felt like, wow, so we sometimes get caught up in the identity thing. I think we do sometimes, and then we then there are times when we are placed in situations where we realize actually we're all the same and we have these same fears and same goals and such. What do you have to say to that?
That's a very good point. I will say on the aspect of translations, we didn't get materials in any Arabic language that wasn't Fusha, the formal dialect, but we did have poll workers that were Chaldean Americans that offered their translation services to those at the polls. So we did at
Okay,
least
great. So
offer some element.
on a verbal level. Yeah, because I know
Exactly.
on a written level, even if you guys were to translate it, I'm not
I
sure
was,
if you're going to have like 5 people that will actually even know how to read it. Because like I said, I'm studying it right now and it's a whole new world, but I appreciate. So you did have the Chaldean translators and such.
at least somewhat. And it was the first step, right? First time any of this stuff had happened.
Right.
So it was just the first step. There's so much more that ended up needing to happen.
Okay.
And that's what ended up leading a couple years later, just last year, to having our first Arabic ballots ever in the city of Dearborn and Hamtramck. That was the first time in U.S. history we had Arabic ballots. You could be able to vote in Arabic, which was
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it was historic.
Is it also only in Dearborn that was, or did they pass it out everywhere? What happened?
Dearborn and Hamtramck. So it was done for those 2 municipalities.
Yeah, unfortunately, our people assimilate and lose the language. That's true. He was saying, or this person, whether male or female, was saying that over time we have lost the language, even on a verbal level, unfortunately. But we're trying. But regarding the challenges that the communities face, because I know you're very welcome. There, he's thanking us. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course.
Yes. But and Bilal, I want to tell our audience that you've worked with the Chaldean community and you helped during the time you were telling me about when they were all really detained, and that period was very scary for many people. The majority were Chaldeans that were detained, but there were other non-Chaldeans. I know in our area there was, and I think in Dearborn, I'm not sure about the details in Dearborn. I was covering the area here in Sterling Heights, and I did go to Detroit, but my understanding it was mostly Chaldeans, and you were involved in that. Can you please tell us about that? And I think this is where the similarities come in. It's like we all have these fears of being from the Middle East and having to kind of be caught in these situations.
Right. I'll preface by saying you're exactly right. Like, it is important to hold on to our culture and our identity and our language, because we're not a mixing pot. We're a salad bowl, right? We have all the different pieces that share the space together, and it's delicious. It's the best salad ever, whether it's fattoush or whatever it may be. It's the best salad ever because it has all those individual pieces. But when we're persecuted, especially as Arab Americans, as Muslim Americans, as Chaldean Americans, we are persecuted collectively. When there was the Muslim ban, which was really an Arab American ban back in 2016, that didn't just impact you or me or my neighbor. It impacted all of us, our cousins overseas. And that was a community that was heavily persecuted. An attorney I got to work with, Clarence Das, who, God rest his soul, he passed away of cancer, worked hard to try and protect those people who are getting deported, who are getting removed from their homes, from their families. When we're persecuted as a collective. And so one of the things that I think we've talked about, the work that needs to happen going forward, is making sure that we are given those federal protections, truly recognized as the communities that we are. Because although we should retain our individual identities culturally, there's one thing that we do share, and that is that we are all from the same region. We all face a lot of those same struggles, and we're all persecuted collectively. So one of the issues that I've been focused on in my career for a very long time is the idea of getting representation on the census. So folks are familiar with the census categories. It's a simple questionnaire you get every 10 years. It doesn't seem that important. And the checkbox that you see on it that says white instead of Arab American or Middle East, North African, you might think, oh, they just missed me this time. But that checkbox means so much more. It is the checkbox that not only gives you your identity, it tells you that, hey, I'm distinct, I'm still here, I'm my culture, but it also gives you research that can be done for your community. Your healthcare background can be looked into. You can actually have specialized research that understands your community, which is going to be different from others. It's going to give you federal protections, ensuring that you have a certain amount of representation or positions in federal government. It's making sure that you're given, and this is a big one, the funding that you need in those institutions like schools, Title I, Title II, Title IV. Those are all pieces of funding that schools would be entitled to if we had that little checkbox that said Middle East, North Africa. If it had that little checkbox that said, hey, we're a community of interest, we're a minority community, and it would fund our schools like Crestwood or Dearborn High, which have 80% or so Arab American populations in those schools at significantly higher margins. And that doesn't just benefit those students, that benefits the entire school, that benefits everyone there. That, imagine a 20% boost in funding for a school, what you could do with that kind of money. You could really change a kid's life. You could change those students' life. So we talk about that representation and having that checkbox there. That is the common issue we should all be fighting for, is getting that on the next census and fighting for the protections and rights that we get from that before that. Because we're not waiting to 2023. We should be entitled to that stuff now. And it shouldn't be an executive order that signs away that right. Because we were about to get it in 2020 for this past census, but one executive order stripped us of that. And that shouldn't be okay. I mean, we were facing that collective persecution, and I think that was the final nail in the head, because it wasn't just now overseas, it was persecuting those who existed in this country. And this is supposed to be where we're safe, where we're protected, no matter what.
When you're saying when you're combining that, the communities from the MENA area, from the Middle East and the North Africa, and you're saying we're persecuted as a whole in certain areas. I mean, we also have a lot of wonderful freedoms and such. So how do we communicate that to people? What do you find between the Chaldean and the Arabic community? Because one of the things that we like to do at the Chaldean Cultural Center, and this is why I've loved meeting with you and conversing, and not just you, but a lot of like-minded people who are willing to have these conversations, that I think sometimes when we stay within our groups, Bilal, there you go. When we stay within our groups, we tend to kind of lose track or lose the opportunity to have these conversations, which it's normal too. A lot of people just kind of tend to do that. But how can we get past these differences that might have even come, a lot of them actually have come from the Middle East, from the regions that where we came. They were birthed in that area, but we're in a different environment now. And I think I've noticed that the younger people, such as yourself, especially the ones that are born here, you guys were born in an environment that was like, that had the freedom of speech from the beginning. You grew up under that. Yes, you experienced what your you saw through your parents, what they experienced, but then you grew up with a sense of that you do have freedom of speech, that you can use communication to make changes, to unite, to grow. I mean, look at such a young age, the position that you're in. So you obviously understood the power of all of that, right? How can we do that and be able, and I'm talking probably maybe the older generation who sometimes gets stuck a little bit on some of the things that we picked up, that, there's always, all regions have negativities and positivities, and some of the truly the some of the negative aspects from Middle Eastern is that people tend to stay within their tribes or within, but in order for us to unite the way that you're saying, and to understand how we can protect ourselves and such, what, from your observation, having worked with both communities, what can we do to come to that understanding together?
Yeah, you make such a
and I'm sorry if I'm putting such a big question on you, but I feel like you can handle it.
No,
I'm just so happy that you're here. I mean, as an activist, and given your background and given how many different communities you've served, I'm like, well, he's the perfect one to answer that question, right?
first of all, for those who don't know, I had the pleasure recently of just connecting with the Chaldean Cultural Center and with the entire staff only recently because of a shared event from Arab America, right? We were there together to try and collectively talk about this beautiful space that existed. I had no idea it was there. I had no idea that this rich cultural pillar was here just down the street. And I found out so much more about the Chaldean community, that the largest population is here. That blew my mind. So if we talk about bridging that gap, right? Bridging those connections, bridging those relationships. I'm very thankful that we were able to connect and to discuss such an important issue like this. We dive into it, and there's this deeply rooted tribalism that exists that I, growing up here, never understood why it had to exist. Whether it was your Chaldean American or Arab American or Muslim American or Lebanese, Yemeni, Iraqi, Egyptian, we have all these different communities that exist here, and we all have the best food. Like, we can stand up proud and say, our food's the best. Why are we fighting amongst each other? But
don't forget the music too.
oh yeah, the music's on point. I love our
The music and the dancing. And I just went to a comedy show. Was it last week?
Were you at that show?
I had so much fun.
I was there too.
I took my kids, I took my cousins, and then when I was telling my family about it the next day, they were like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't sure how. This was my first time going, and I didn't know how." And I got to tell you, it's these kind of things, because I was born in Baghdad, and I visited Palestine, I visited Jordan, different parts of Tunisia. I've gone to different parts, and one of the things that often is missing or is not as highlighted in our communities is the humor. You know, you enter people's homes, and aside from the food, of course, but the humor that's involved and the humble aspects of it is something that we don't see often. And I really try to, because we get involved in the other issues, and sometimes because we're not necessarily, like, even when you guys came at the cultural center, we had so much fun laughing and joking. So when I went to the comedy show, it just took me back to the heart of what we like about the culture, that sometimes kind of is like, okay, we have this show once a year. It's like, no, we need to really highlight that a little bit more. But that was so much fun.
Yeah.
But you were saying the food, but the dancing, and there's so many things that we have in common. The language, we have in common, the Arabic language, you know.
It's a beautiful language at that.
Yeah, and we're not, so there is a lot of common things. And as I said, I think part of communication is being able to address certain things without losing the reality that we have assimilated and grown up together somehow, and we are part of each other's lives on many levels.
I think, first of all, I think we are definitely the most unified when we can make fun of ourselves. And that comedy show and being able to laugh together about the same jokes, it just highlights that. But yeah, we talk about these shared cultures and shared experiences that we have. I think the idea of when we come to this country, we think folks are going to assimilate so much into that individualistic culture, so much into that just me instead of we. But one of the best parts about overseas and the culture that we bring is that we're such a collective. We work as groups, and we love to share that. You can tell by our hospitality, the way we love to share what we have with others. And that's definitely another thing that we share, is that level
true.
of hospitality that we offer.
Yes, that's, everybody can agree on that. I think anybody, Westerner or not, who goes to the Middle East sees that. And you know, and then the service aspect, which you brought up earlier, because there's that sense of community. So I want to leave with you sharing a little bit with the other organizations that you work with, and, you know, to let us know how, if we could get involved in things, how can people learn more about them? So please share all the other work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a matter of becoming an advocate in your space, and not feeling like you have to hold so much on to what's back home, in the sense of the anger and the frustrations as well. Take the positive of everything here and work with these different organizations that are existing to serve all of us as a collective. Like I mentioned, some of the orgs I had worked with include MLCV, For Our Future. I've been able to partner with Access in the past, and they're a great organization that helps that advocacy. Engage does some good work as well. But really, I think it's working with your friends and your neighbors and taking it on yourself to be that trusted messenger. You're gonna see that one ammo. We all have that one uncle who likes to get angry at things and he yells at the family dinners. Be the guy who talks to that uncle and is like, no, Ammo, you know what? This is my best friend. He's a Yemeni American. This is my other best friend. He's Iraqi American. And you know what we both love? We love Shai. Shai is the best. And we're going to be able to come together on that aspect.
We can't deny the Shai, yeah.
No, and we're going to go all the way up to the Lansing or all the way down to DC. And we're going to fight for what we are entitled to, not just for me or for them, but for you too, even if you are so adamantly against it. And it's being comfortable and confident opening up and saying what you stand for. Because you're right, there's a lot of that collectiveness we're seeing in the youth, and encouraging that is so important. Don't instill in those who are younger than you the ideas of resentment and frustration and hate. Share the positivity, because that's how we're going to move forward. One organization, I'll leave you with this, that I've had the pleasure of working with is APIA Vote, the Asian American Pacific Islander Vote. An amazing organization that brings together all the different APIA communities. Still hear me?
Yeah, you just got back. Yeah, go ahead.
So it brings all of them together under one umbrella and fights for them on the civic side. It offers backpack distributions, vaccines, whatever resource they need, they've been able to offer to that entire APIA community. So the APIA community, the Asian American Pacific Islander, is such a wide blanket that covers dozens of different languages, different cultures, different countries. And yet there may be some frustrations amongst each other, but they're able to collectively unify and work in this space. And it is so productive. It has led to so many countless points of representation and resources that are created specifically now for this community, including a position at the federal level that sits in Biden's cabinet on his administration and advises him as a liaison for the API community. We need something like that for Arab Americans. We need something like that for the Middle East and North African communities that have come here, right? Chaldean Americans, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, all of us together need that representative in the president's ear. And that kind of collective action has led to that resource for them. That's our next step. That's what we push for as a collective, because it doesn't matter which one of us gets up there. If it's one of us, we have a seat at the table and we're no longer on that menu.
You know, you're a really good example of everything that you're saying. You do represent that, and it's in your energy, and it's really genuine. Seriously, it's not like with all these hidden agendas, and that's what we need, just to start from the heart, be willing to understand each other, work with each other, and just treat each other as human beings. Thank you, Bilal, so much for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
I look forward to seeing what more you're going to accomplish, because I can't even imagine. So thank you for everybody for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.